So you're wondering about what's going on with this latest update with Dark and Darker? There's a whole bunch of changes. The announcement for the wipe is here. Let's get some questions answered and dig right into it. Yo, what up, guys? It's Derp Wigglies here with another Dark and Darker video. This one's about Hotfix 6, specifically the Early Access Hotfix 6. That's starting on August 22nd in 2023 at 10:30 a.m. So it happened a little bit earlier today as of shooting this video. And it's a pretty big patch. And it changes the playstyle of some classes drastically, but it also balances some other stuff. Some people are kind of hating on it for specific reasons. Some people are loving it. Some people are stoked about the wipe. Some people are pissed. But I'm going to dig through this and try to answer some questions here. So, because a lot of this stuff is stuff that I've been suggesting for probably since like playtest 4. And a lot of this stuff has just become a problem now that early access is out. But let's get right into it. So, a quote from SDF is, "We will be doing the Hotfix number 6 update starting August 22nd, 2023. So today at 10:30 a.m. When the patch starts, you will not be able to log into the game. Blah 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 blah. The servers will return in 2 hours, so they're already back up. The first early access wipe will be held next Monday. So not this Monday, but next Monday. All character levels, items, gold, and skills will be reset. Bluestone shards will never be reset. Triumph levels will not be reset this time, and will only be reset at the start of official seasons. A new early access leaderboard will start shortly after the wipe, once things have stabilized." So before we get into the actual patch notes, I kind of want to address the wipe. In my opinion, I think they're doing the wipe because of people exploiting, and they had a issue with people selling gold early on. So I think they're trying to get rid of a lot of the gold seller gold that wasn't in the market, and kind of correct the market, because the market's been fluctuating very rapidly as they've been banning gold seller accounts and stuff like that and wiping those accounts out. And there's lots of gold coming and going from the market every day, as they try to stabilize things. And now that they're getting, they've been doing a lot of work on their anti-cheat. So now that the anti-cheat is starting to stabilize a little bit, and they're starting to catch up with the cheat programs and gold farmers and stuff like that, they're going to try to do a wipe to correct the market. And I assume this is probably going to happen more regularly throughout early access. So I wouldn't get too attached to characters or gear or anything. I would just try to have fun with it, learn your characters while we can until official seasons start. Right now, everything's kind of up in the air. Just take it easy, just play to have fun. Like, don't sweat too much right now. Learn the builds. Stuff's going to change. This is early access. We're only like two and a half weeks in. Like, the game's not even really out yet. It's early access. So keep that in mind, and don't get pissed if there's multiple wipes in the first month or two of this game, right? They're still figuring stuff out and getting stuff stabilized, and they don't want to ruin the progression, over time. They want to get it set up properly so that when it gets closer to launch, they can actually have a smooth launch, right? That's why they're doing this stuff now for early access. This isn't a full release. It's EA. So just play with that in mind. I'm personally a huge fan of them wiping early and often throughout EA to keep things, updating, and to keep the market kind of in flux at all times, where things aren't getting crazy overpriced or crazy underpriced. When you have wipes, the people who get good gear first are usually the good players, right? It's not gold farmers. It's not people who have been buying gold or buying items. It's the people who've went out there and earned it, right? So I love fresh wipes. I don't really care about grinding the characters up. To me, a level 1 character is just as fun as a level 20. But that's my personal opinion. So let's get into the patch notes. So the first thing on the list is an additional character slot has been added, so you can create at least one of each class now, which is huge. I kept having to delete some classes because I wanted to play one of each. Don't have to do that anymore. Currency used to unlock classes. The currency used to unlock classes has been returned. So that means that blue shards and red shards that have been spent on classes is going to be returned to you. Game time has been slightly increased on the normal Inferno map, which is huge because that gives us more time to help kill bosses and loot up. That's something I've been pushing for a while now. Game time has been increased in all high roller maps, which is going to help solve a huge issue of people not playing in high roller because there's simply not enough time. When everybody's so geared out in high roller, it can take 6 minutes just to have a 3v3, and that's half the map, right? Just for one combat, and then you have everybody just scrambling to find portals at the end, and it's just not. It's not beneficial for end game gameplay, right? So it needs to be more time. I also think they need to reduce the cost to 50 gold. And in my opinion, I think they need to add a way to get into high roller for free. So my suggestion is to reopen the stairs down in the ruins and add, basically, if you can get through the ruins, find the stairs, fight your way through everybody else waiting for the stairs, and then make it in, you can get into high roller for free, right? Because that's going to help increase some stuff like gear turnover, and it's going to burn a lot of the better gear. It's going to focus more people into high roller in the ruins that are actually trying to fight over that high roller. It's going to push a lot more competition into an already underutilized map. So I think that would be one way to revitalize ruins a little bit, because right now it's kind of like the unofficial PvE / gear farming map. And I think that if you want to relieve pressure off of normal goblin caves and normal crypts, the way to do it would be to start funneling some of these juiced out players into ruins and then getting more people into high roller. So that's a good start, but I think they could improve upon that. They've also added an additional blue portal, and the Death Swarm closing times have been modified to close slower for the goblin caves, which is huge. So I know a lot of people's big complaints were not being able to get out. A lot of people don't know about the secret staircase. So I would like the people who aren't getting out regularly, I would familiarize yourself with the secret staircase. I'm going to do a video on goblin caves and the ruins and crypts here pretty soon. Just about tips and tricks, but familiarize yourself with the staircase. This additional blue portal will help, and slowing down the closing times will help a lot as well for people struggling to get out of goblin caves. Like, nobody wants to be the last person on the map and not be able to find a blue portal, even though you've already killed everybody. You could be the person going on a rampage, wiping the whole lobby, but then you don't run into a blue portal at the end, and it just kills that run for you, right? You lose all your stuff, you lose all the great gear you got, and you were doing so good and you're on such a high note, only to have the game kind of cheat you out of a win. That sucks. So that's a huge win in my book. The Shrine of Protection physical damage reduction buff has been reduced from 30% to 15%. So this is going to help specifically with fighters and clerics who are reaching that 85 to 95% damage reduction threshold. So that's going to help a lot with them, which is also a good thing. It's the only thing that sucks is it's nerfing fighters slightly while also nerfing every other class in a way that's a little bit more impactful than the fighter, right? Because the fighter's going to use the protection shrine to just like get to that higher echelon of damage reduction, while everybody else uses a protection shrine just to get to like relevant damage reduction numbers. So it's kind of nerfing everybody else more than it's nerfing the fighter. I like this, but I also have to try it out more and see how helpful the shrines of protection are now, because it might just be something you skip at this point. The risk of sitting there for 30 seconds or longer to get that shrine, it might not be worth the 15% protection for stuff like wizard and warlock and rogue and ranger. So yeah, I think it's good, but I'm not sure yet. So pots and crates give a little bit of EXP when broken instead of 0 XP. This is something I've been pushing for in the Troubadour chat. It's one of the reasons why we're leveling so slow, especially solo players. You're not getting any XP when on a barbarian when you're breaking chests open. So barbarians are leveling; they're super under leveled as a whole. So this is going to help barbarians specifically out. It's a pretty big buff to leveling for barbarians. Quality of life update: silver coins now stacked to 30 instead of 25. I don't know why that wasn't a thing already, because you sell them in stacks of 30. Armor rating curve has been modified and slightly flattened at the very high range. So this is more for juiced out fighters and juiced out clerics who are getting a nerf. Anybody who's getting to that, 85 to 95% armor reduction rating is effectively getting like a 20 times health pool bonus. And this is going to help with that. So this is a somewhat decent nerf to fighters and clerics. The physical damage reduction now has a hard cap of 85%. And the reason for that is 85%, to give a good example, 85%, like this is kind of quick math, but 85% is effectively a 6x of your health pool when fighting somebody with just physical damage. 95% is a 20x of your health pool while fighting somebody with physical damage. So the difference between 85% and 95% is actually massive. So capping it at 85% is actually a huge thing. I think they could actually go down to like 80, either like 75 or 80 might be good, especially with how effective shields are right now. I've seen a lot of people who are really good at blocking just destroying people. So I think that fighters should be more reliant on the fact that they can wear shield, like they can wear kite shields and pavases, rather than just like walking around in plate, right? And just swinging, just W key and left click. Like that's not really a fun gameplay mechanic in my opinion. I love fighter, but I like to use the shields. I like to play defensively, and I like to do counterplay versus just W key and left click. So I think that there should be a little bit more risk with fighter. I think they could go down to 75% hard as a hard cap, maybe 80. I think 85 is okay, but we'll see. So Rogue's double jump, this is a highly contested one. Rogue's double jump has been modified to apply a temporarily movement speed reduction upon landing. The maximum height of the double jump has also been slightly reduced. So they actually gave, it's pretty rough for rogues right now. So if you take double jump, after you double jump, your movement speed is cut down by 30 for 3 seconds. So you're basically self-slowing yourself every time you double jump, which means that you can you're only going to want to use it when you absolutely need to get away from somebody, to get to that place where they can't get to you. That's like the only time you'll ever want to use it. Using it just to dodge attacks and just to evade slightly is going to be a death sentence, because it cuts your movement speed by 30 for 3 seconds. This is the next one's a huge one that I've been kind of advocating for on Rogue as counterplay for cleric and fighter. Rogue's weak point attack now reduces target's armor rating by 40% instead of reducing physical damage reduction. So it's a flat armor rating reduction of 40% instead of just physical damage reduction, which is actually a massive buff. So it's going to cut through, basically it's just a 40% more damage, right? Because you're cutting through their armor rating by 40%. And that's pretty huge. And it's going to make group comps like Ranger, Rogue, Cleric, and Barbarian, Rogue, Cleric, or Bard. Having a Rogue in your party with weak point is actually going to be a lot more effective for like if you're playing with a Barbarian, a Ranger, a Fighter, anybody else who does physical damage. So weak point's now super good for taking out fighters and clerics. So I know a lot of people are kind of shitting on the rogues right now, but I think they're missing the point of what they're trying to do, and they're trying to make rogue more of a team player versus just solo only. So, or like rogue team only. Because weak point can now be used, like if the barb charges the cleric and the rogue gets up behind the cleric in weak points, say with ambush or something like that, then you could do a bunch of immediate burst damage and just immediately kill that cleric. That's immediate one person down, and then the rogue just gets the hell out of there, and then comes back in when their weak points back up, targeting either the ranger or the wizard, whoever else is squishy. So I think that this is going to be, we're going to see a huge buff with this, and I think the team play from rogue is going to be way better. Rogue can no longer equip the hand crossbow. This is another hotly contested one. I am kind of a fan of this. I don't think that they should have ever had the hand crossbow, unless they took off the ability to use rupture and weak point with the hand crossbow. The reason why the hand crossbow was so effective was because you could add rupture and weak point to it. You can't add quick shot to a crossbow. Like, you shouldn't be able to add, there's already so much damage from these crossbows and decent range, and the bolts fly so fast, like, it's harder to dodge than a normal bow. So, especially the hand crossbow, because you can't really tell when it's going to fire. It's just, there's no reason for those attacks to stack on the hand crossbow. So if they ever do give the hand crossbow back to the rogue, they need to make it to where weak point and rupture can't, and like the poison doesn't apply to the hand crossbow at all. No weapon effects, right? Just like with the crossbows. I think there's only like 1 or 2 weapon effects that apply to crossbows. Fighter's taunt ability, physical damage reduction, reduced from 15% to 10%. This was really good for PvE. I think this is a little bit unnecessary and overboard for the nerf of the fighter, because having fighter stand out in PvE is where the fighter should stand out. They should be the tank for PvE, whereas barbarian should be, in my opinion, a better tank for like PvP. I don't think they need a nerf fighter for PvE. It doesn't make sense, and people aren't going to take barricade and taunt for doing PvP anyway. So, which leads into the fighter's barricade gives 50 armor rating and defensive position instead of 15% physical damage reduction. So this is kind of like just a better balancing. It just ups your armor rating, but now more stuff is eating directly through armor rating instead of physical damage reduction. It seems like they're just trying to lean away from physical damage reduction as a whole and make it more rare, instead of being able to stack it, right? So this is kind of a nerf. It's not really a huge deal in most situations outside of, like weak point and crossbows and stuff later down the line. Rager's penetrating shot now grants 25% more armor penetration, and an error in the description text has been fixed. This has been a huge point of penetrating shot. It just didn't penetrate enough armor. They either needed to switch it to just straight up, instead of physical damage reduction, penetrating 25% physical damage reduction. I think that's where the error was. It needs to just cut down 25% of their entire armor rating. And if that's what they changed it to, I haven't really checked yet. Then this is great. A huge win for penetrating shot, which has been very rarely used, and is something that I've kind of been pushing for, is that rangers should also have some way to counter fighters. Traditionally they could, like in Dungeons and Dragons, rangers are one of the counter plays to fighters, is that you just kite them forever. And they've added rangers' ability to do this later on as well. So they've nerfed Bard again, which kind of sucks. Bard's Din of Darkness attribute damage ratio reduced from 10, 30, 50 to 6, 9, 12, which is a huge top end nerf. From 50 to 20 to 12 is pretty big. Explosive Bottle and Oil Lancers now do magical damage instead of physical. So this is also another counterplay to Fighter and Cleric, kind of a nerf to Fighter and Cleric. It's also a needed one. I don't know why they were doing physical damage. They should have been doing magical damage or some kind of environmental damage from the very beginning. So this just makes sense. But it also is a direct nerf to Fighter and Cleric. It's also a really good idea for counterplay. If you have explosive bottles or oil lanterns, throw them on the Fighter and Cleric, because now they're doing magical damage, and if they're fully stacked out in plate and they're going to take more damage from magical damage, then hitting them with the explosive bottle or oil lantern is just going to burn through their health. So that's like, here's how you fight fighters now. Explosive bottles, oil lanterns, weak point is going to be huge for fighting fighters. Penetrating shot's going to be huge for fighting fighters. Instruments are now bard only, which takes out a lot of the fun from barbarian Achilles striking people with drums. I thought it was hilarious. I was doing it. Did I think that should have been in the game? No. It was fun as hell, and it was funny, and it made for great content, but I don't really think it was supposed to be like that. I think they should take off Achilles Strike from all thrown weapons, in my opinion. I think Achilles Strike shouldn't apply to throwing axes. It just shouldn't. And it shouldn't have applied to drums either. But now you can't even throw drums as a barbarian, so they fixed that. They significantly reduced the values for physical damage reduction that appear as random attributes on items. So this is also a nerf to fighter and cleric, which means that they're not going to be able to get as tanky because there's going to be less items with physical damage reduction floating around on the market. And those items are going to become exceedingly expensive. So the only people that have them are going to be like either the people who RMT or the people who are just really good at the game, which is kind of how it should be. Hopefully they can curb RMT a bit more. They've been doing a decent job of reducing the impact of RMT. But it's going to be a constant fight, right? Until there's adequate AI cheat detection and RMT detection, this is just going to be a constant battle that they're fighting. So this is going to cost, like, if you're a trader, if you're hoarding items with physical damage reduction, or if you have been hoarding items with physical damage reduction, now's going to be the time to sell them, or at least soon. Because that's where you're going to get all your money now, and then there's going to, in a week, a week and a half, there's going to be the wipe anyway. So sell it all now and make all your money, and then go have fun. Falchion damage has been slightly reduced, which is a nerf to warlock and fighter and bard. I think this is a good call because the falchion basically became the primary weapon for all three of those classes: fighter, warlock, and bard. So there needs to be weapon variation, because once things get stale and like those three classes are only using falchions, it just becomes an easy game of counterplay because everybody's using the falchion and everybody recognizes the falchion swing pattern, right? So this is actually good. Rapiers might be more viable on bard now, especially like greens, blues, purples. And especially since rapiers have a little bit higher reach and faster attack speed, and you can do rapier mastery. So that perk actually has meaning now, because it's going to probably put the rapier damage slightly over, at least DPS, slightly over the damage for falchion, which is going to be huge if you take it and you kind of want to play a battle bard. And then the windless crossbow has 25% armor penetration, which is actually a huge thing because windless crossbows haven't been used at all. The only two classes that can use windless are ranger can use it naturally, and fighter can use it if they take the weapon master perk. So fighter with windless crossbow is actually kind of a great strat now. I wouldn't use it on ranger as much unless you're taking the windless crossbow with penetrating shot, and that would basically be like your fighter weapon. So if you have your inventory button on like a hotkey on your mouse or something, then you can easily just like hot swap into a windless crossbow when you see a fighter, and then just like headshot them, and that should be most of their life, right? Because there's 25% natural armor pen on the windless crossbow, and then you get another 25% from your pen shot. So that's a huge counter to fighters now. Crossbow has 20% armor penetration. This is actually what I would run, and that can also be used by fighter and ranger and bard. So this is also just could actually be used by wizard too. So wizard, fighter, barb, I think, are bard are the three classes that wizard, fighter, ranger, and bard are the ones that could use crossbows. So this is actually a huge buff for them because it has 20% armor penetration now. Hand crossbow has 5% armor penetration. I think there's only like three classes that you can use it now. That is the fighter if they take weapon mastery, the ranger, and then the bard. So bard gets a kind of a slight buff here, in my opinion, because you can do rapier, basically the rogue kit, rapier and hand crossbow is actually a pretty good combo for fighters now, to use against fighters. Flange Mace and Morningstar still have 15% armor penetration, so clerics and fighters can actually have a little bit of armor pen to fight each other. War Maul, which is a barbarian weapon, has a barbarian and cleric. It can do 30. It does 30% armor penetration. So barbarian and cleric. So barbarian with a War Maul is going to be probably a new meta against fighters. So maybe like a Bardiche or double axe in one hand, and then a War Maul in the neck in your second slot for if you see a fighter. So you could switch it up a little bit more. Magic Staff now has magical damage by default. This is actually huge. Magic Staff has been super underutilized, and actually I've been pushing to get it removed from the game because it just hasn't served any purpose. I think this isn't enough to justify it, to buff Cleric, Wizard, and Warlock starting kits. They need to be buffed more. The reason why they're not being played as much as, say, Fighter, Barbarian, Ranger, Rogue, and those other classes is because their starting kits just aren't as good. Cleric has one of the best starting kits, but Warlock and Wizard have terrible starting kits. And the Cleric doesn't need to use the Magic Staff to do damage because they have the Flanged Mace and Shield. So, but the two classes that basically do, other than their spells, all their melee is coming from the Wizard Staff, or the Magic Staff. So, in my opinion, they either need to increase the cast time of the Magic Staff to be more on par with like a Crystal Ball, or maybe just a tiny bit slower, or they need to give them books, like a book, like maybe give Wizard a book and a Magic Staff, and give Warlock maybe like a falchion and a Magic Staff or something. They need their base kits updated a little bit. And I think that Cleric really doesn't need a Magic Staff. I think that they should probably have a book, starting out with a gray book and their and just keep the rest of the kit the same. So they also reduce the base projectile damage reduction values for plate armors. So I haven't really tested these, but I know that they got nerfed a little bit. Not super heavily, it doesn't seem like. But I have to go through and look at all of them individually. And then SDF goes on to say, sorry, items that have been changed from being worn to being unwearable may not be visible temporarily, but can be checked when entering the dungeon. Thank you for playing Dark and Darker. So that's about it. This has been going on for almost 30 minutes. This is a huge update. Thank you to everybody who's been liking, following, subscribing, joining the guild. I'm going to put your guys' names up here. Thank you to everybody in this list. I can't do this without you. Thank you for the supers. Thank you for the subs. Thank you for joining the Patreon and the YouTube membership. Thank you to everybody who's been hanging out in the Discord. We get like two to four groups of 3 playing almost every night now. So if you guys want to play, or you're looking for people to play with in a more chill and relaxed environment that's not super crazily moderated, come hang out. Join the Discord. The link's in the description below. But yeah, as always, I love you guys. You guys are amazing. I hope you guys are having a wonderful rest of your night, wonderful rest of your day, whatever time it is. Peace.